Welcome to Mac Auditorium. We're in the final moments here before we open the doors and start letting the crowd in for the Beyond the Buddy Check program, sponsored by Fins and Feathers. It's a continuation of our mental health initiatives. We've got the set all ready to go, done our sound checks, did some pre-interviews with the people involved, and now we're just putting the finishing touches on things.
All right, stand by for an on-time departure. That means if you haven't found your seat already, we've got our president's in his seat and our incoming chairman is in his seat. That's a signal for all the rest of us to find our seat. Welcome, everyone. I'm really glad to see even more filtering in the back. Tonight's program, really special thing. You know, it's brought to us by our own alumni office, sponsored this idea, but they couldn't do it without the help of Fins and Feathers, an amazing group of alums who do a tremendous amount that some of you students know about, some of you don't, but as you matriculate and graduate and become alums yourself, you're gonna realize what a special organization they are. So we are here because they supported this idea that came out of our alumni office. You know, a lot of you students and many of you in the back have heard me speak before, and I speak to our students and I speak to their parents a lot about this unique nature of this university of ours, Queen of the Hills, right? You know, there's nearly 3,000 places that young people in this country could choose to go to earn a four-year degree. But there are only a few, measured maybe a few dozen at the most, who commit themselves so fully to creating graduates who are equal to the challenges and opportunities of citizenship in a free republic. You don't find those kind of words in a whole lot of university mission statements. And some that do, don't put a lot of time and effort into fulfilling that part of their mission. And you've chosen to come to a place that does, and our alums, they know it well. Other things I speak to those potential students about, and I speak to their families about, are some of the truths that we found out about the nature of being a human on this planet throughout recorded history. Something that we've learned is that the educated will always dominate the ignorant. So we educate ourselves. We've learned that in the natural state, the strong will always do as they will, and the weak will suffer what they must. We also learned that in this world, there's both goodness and badness in it. And those forces are locked in a perpetual struggle as to which is going to have dominion over how we live. Therefore, there has to be some places like our university, where men and women can prepare themselves for these truths, where the good people can strive to become stronger and more educated than those who wish to imperil us and put our way of life at risk. This university provides an environment where all of our students and our staff and faculty can discern what it is to be good. What does that mean? And we offer a journey that builds the resolve so that people can stand for the good, even when it's difficult or unpopular. In doing these things, we fulfill our Norwich mission. As any alum can tell you, and I know many of them are going to be able to see this later as we post it, immersion in this sort of environment develops a very particular and certain type of graduate. There are many telltale signs that someone is one of us, a member of our tribe. One of those traits that shines very brightly tonight and is applicable to this panel is that throughout your time on the Hill, I think our students discover the maxim on their own that if you want to go fast, you go alone. But if you want to go a long ways in life, you go together. You go as a team. This brotherhood and sisterhood aspect of our culture, it extends the relationships that you make here as students. Turns them into lifelong commitments to one another. It's cemented by the shared experiences that you have with each other and that you share with those tens of thousands of alums that are out there and are going to see this later. You've overcome challenges together You've endured hardships, and you've savored triumphs together. Those are special things, and they bond you together in a very unique way. This thought is reflected in the premise of the Norwich Buddy Check program itself, that the most fundamental responsibility of a Norwich graduate is to look out for one another. You should be learning that now as students, but it comes into full blossom once you become an alum. It's a lifelong thing. It's a commitment that lasts through the rest of your time. This is the spirit that binds societies together. And it's one of those things, there's all kinds of things that go in to make that secret sauce that makes Norwich. But that is one of the magic ingredients. This is the call to duty that remains with us every morning. Some of you don't get to do it yet. Some of you got to wait till tomorrow night. Some of you already have your rings. But when you're a Norwich man or woman, you get up in the morning and you slip that ring on your finger and you look at that Norwich person eyeball to eyeball in the mirror. I want you to think of that commitment. You're putting that ring on and it's committing you to all your brothers and sisters that shared this place with you. You'll notice that we brought Finn too. I brought Finn too with me here. He's the model of the statue that you see at the north end of Dewey Hall there. And that was provided by Fins and Feathers. That was the model used, and they needed a home for it, and they thought the Garrison House would be the proper spot for it. And he lives at my house, and it's a constant reminder to me that as the shepherd of this flock, it's my obligation to help our students embrace this responsibility, to look out for one another, to mentor and teach one another. Don't leave any cadet behind. It's also my responsibility to help you find meaning in doing it well. The hard truth, however, is that not all of us always know how we can assist our fellow alums. Sometimes there's a bit of a gap that exists between our desire to help and the skills and abilities that we have at our disposal. So tonight's panel is designed to start to fill that gap. My friends, I've got 3 friends on this panel. Dr. Isabelle Desjardins from our Board of Trustees, Lieutenant Colonel Chris Cadigan, retired Special Forces officer, and everyone in this room knows Reverend Bill Wick, our university chaplain. With the 3 of them, they bring the education, the experience, and the knowledge to help fill some of that gap so that everyone who sees this presentation or everyone who's part of it today is going to walk away with this with a little keener ability to fulfill that primary obligation that you have as alums. At this stage, I'd like you to give a warm round of applause for our 3 panelists and for Fins and Feathers. My time is up, and I'm going to turn the stage over to tonight's moderator, Randy Miller, class of 1993. Many of you know Randy. He's well known throughout our community. His books on Norwich history have made him semi-famous, and his many, many years of providing the Second Mess podcast, that was quite a service you provided for your fellow alums and your university. And that's the place. They still exist online. So you students that have never seen a Second Mess podcast, go look it up, because that's the place where Norwich's greatest tales and legends come to life. You can hear the real things that happened at various times in our history and learn the real stories of alums and what they've done with the gifts that they picked up here at Norwich. So, Randy, I want to thank you for agreeing to moderate this panel. You have a certain skill for it, and it's noticed by many. So at this point, Randy, you have the con.
Thank you. Thank you. B.G. McCollough and I were cadets at the same time on the Hill. I don't think anybody would have predicted that he would be back here as Commandant, but I know that people are universally happy about it, and we're lucky to have him here, and I'm sure you guys have figured that out already. General Broadmeadow, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Fins and Feathers, thank you for coming tonight. I know there's a lot going on this week. If you're a junior, you're 24 hours away from getting a ring. And on any given night, you have a lot of different things that you can do with your time. So we really appreciate you carving out these next couple of minutes to come here and talk about something this important. Fins and Feathers' mission is to enhance the alumni experience while supporting worthy Norwich causes. Those causes range from scholarships like the Deborah Evans Memorial Scholarship Fund, the Brian Bill Scholarship, the Memorial Scholarship for the legendary Doc Martin, as well as donations to Norwich athletic causes. The Bloomberg Terminals upstairs, Women Kicking Glass, and of course the Commandant's Sophomore Expeditions program, just to name a few. Norwich is the world's greatest leadership lab, and throughout our more than 200 years of history, our graduates can always be counted on to make an impact in the world. We are a force to be reckoned with, but we are not immune from the challenges of mental health and the slew of issues that can accompany it, like substance abuse. In 2023, Fins and Feathers added mental health awareness as a critical mission. We produced a short video featuring all three of our panelists tonight, you may recognize them from that, to raise awareness and help remove the stigma that many feel when they're asking for help. The impact of the video is hard to quantify, but almost immediately we started receiving messages from people telling us that they needed it. And that was all that we needed to hear. We raised additional funds and we commissioned the statue of Finn up on the UP, his twin right over here, a service dog beside an empty bench where its handler should be sitting. The monument serves as a reminder to all who pass by to check in with their Norwich brothers and sisters so they know that they are never alone. These two initiatives complement the Alumni Association's Buddy Check program that they rolled out several years ago. And I'm sure I speak on behalf of all the Fins and Feathers guys when I say of all of the causes that we have supported, this is the one that we are most proud of. And I know the Commandant already asked the board members, but if you wouldn't mind standing up one more time real quick so everybody can get their eyes on you, please do so. Thank you. Get a good look at them. If you're putting together your network, these are people you want to have in your Rolodex, trust me. First, we're going to take a deeper dive into the buddy check, and then we're going to pivot to resilience building so everybody can build up their defenses in advance of the challenges that I promise you will not spare any of us in life. We should keep in mind that not everybody in the Norwich community serves in the military or law enforcement or other occupations that skew a bit higher when it comes to mental health, but combat-induced PTSD is not the only kind. Life's curveballs come in many forms: loss of loved ones, financial difficulties, health issues, accidents. Unfortunately, the list is long. Our panel tonight, I'm going to give you a bit more of a specific introduction to them, are three of my favorite Norwich people who I enjoy working with. First, Dr. Isabelle Desjardins, who is a board-certified psychiatrist by trade. She's also a Norwich mom and a current valuable member of our Board of Trustees. To her left, someone who probably doesn't need an introduction, University Chaplain Bill Wick. I've known Reverend Wick since the fall of '89 when I was a rook. That was his very first year on campus. And whenever I start thinking that I know a lot of Norwich people, I think of people like Reverend Wick. He knows a lot of Norwich people. He has presided over countless Norwich weddings, funerals, counseling sessions, buddy checks, and celebrations over the past few decades. He knows us, he gets us, because he's one of us. To his left, who I'm sure a bunch of you probably already know him, is Lieutenant Colonel Chris Cadigan, class of '95. We were on the Hill together. Although I graduated a couple of years ahead of him, he's actually older than I am because he went straight from high school into the United States Army, and by the time he arrived as a rook, he was already a combat veteran after serving in the Gulf War in 1991. He graduated a few years later, went off into his military career in the United States Army, spending most of his time as a Green Beret in the 7th Special Forces Group. He's deployed to many places for many different reasons, and he's also one of my closest friends and a wealth of information when it comes to this stuff that we're going to talk about tonight. Give them a warm welcome. I'm going to come join you over here, and we're going to end with a Q&A, so if anybody has anything they want to add, you can feel free at that time. All right. We have our mission. We have two topics to talk about. Before we can talk about anything, we should probably define it so we're all on the same sheet of music. So, Doc, I'm going to come to you first. What is the buddy check and what is its purpose?
The way I see it, first, it is an absolute privilege to be here among you and to be here in front of you and discussing this, so thank you. I think that the buddy check for me is about community and it's about belonging. We all, as human beings, need to feel like we belong among a group of people who are our people. And the buddy check really exemplifies that, makes it alive, and it is the foundation for our individual ability to cope. Whenever the going gets tough, you need to know that you have your people around, even if you don't talk to them all the time. Even if you haven't talked to them in a year, 2 year, 5 year, there are people in your lives that you know if you pick up the phone, they're going to be there. And if you are there for somebody who calls you, you know that it's not even a question, you're going to be there for them. And this is the foundation of what you're getting at Norwich University. And this is also the emblem of it is the buddy check.
How do you know if you're doing it right?
The way I see it is it's pretty much like doing the job that I've done for 25 years is you have to be present in the moment when you need to be in the moment. And that if you're present and you're 100% in, you're doing it right. It's not only about you being the person who might be of support. It's really dependent on the person who needs the help. And that person also has accountability. And you have to remember that in life, you have to own accountability for your own self. And it starts there. And when you're trying to help someone, you cannot feel the entire burden. What you can provide is your presence and your intention. And that's the first step in terms of doing it right.
Rev, you have many decades of experience doing buddy checks. I've known you for more than 30 years. You check in on me regularly. Whenever you do, it doesn't feel awkward or pressured at all. How did you get so good at it? What's your approach before you call somebody?
I think the title buddy check has a key word to it. The idea of being a buddy, being a friend. That we have a Rook buddy system they go through, getting through Rookdom, not just on their own, but with colleagues around them. It's not only an opportunity to check on others, it's their opportunity to check up on you. And so by calling and reaching out to them, they also are listening to what you have to say. And while your intention is rightly to concern yourself with how they're doing, as they listen to your voice, and if they're really a buddy, they're also following up on you. So it's reciprocity, reciprocal in that way to start with. I want to emphasize the buddy check system. Yes, we look for someone else, but understand the system really works best when you allow them also to check up on you. Answers like, how are you? Fine. I'm married. Fine is not a good answer. Whatever is not a good answer. Okay is not a good answer. But to make the system work, it's not just calling when you know of a difficulty, it's calling just for no reason whatsoever. I often will purchase from my wife plants. She doesn't want dead plants, she wants plants that can grow. Mother's Day, birthday, anniversary, or just because days. Which of those mean the most to her? Just because. So if we're in the habit of reaching out in a buddy check, not because we know there's an issue, but we're just keeping that reciprocity going, then when there is an issue, it's not so odd and weird because we've been doing that all along. I've told students in my office, come by for a crisis or just come by for a cup of coffee, cup of tea, cup of hot chocolate for no reason whatsoever. That allows the relational background to undergird the buddy check system. So I'll add two things and go on to Chris here. One, it demands a commitment of time. I'm a pastor and chaplain. I never get the impression from Scripture that Christ was ever in a hurry with people. One of the greatest gifts we can give is this. And I will tell you, when folk come by the office, it's usually not scheduled. I may have 1 or 2 official appointments per day, and the rest are all walking in. Rev, are you busy? Of course I'm busy. Sit down. May I close the door? Yes, you may. What I share, except for child abuse, it stays here, and then it starts. So the second thing besides time in the buddy check system as an ongoing thing is developing trust. We don't seek out someone we don't trust. And so the foundational quality there is you've earned that trust. And how fast can trust be lost? Rapidly. It takes a while to earn it. And the third thing I would say with that is eyeballs. When we had COVID, I went down and talked to Vijaya Yazida at our school. I did not want to have students in my office by computer. I said, what can we do? And they put a plastic screen on my desk, which is still there. Perhaps you've seen it still there. I said, that's our mask. Take off your mask. That's our protection. I want to see you. So the third thing on this with the trust factor and time is that personal touch, not just the clinical touch. The clinical things are important, and Nicole is here tonight too, and her staff. We appreciate all that work. But I guarantee you, probably the first person you will seek out is a friend. And so those three things of trust and of time and eyeballs, and knowing that as you check up on them, they're also checking up on you as an ongoing thing, not an occasional or accidental thing.
Chris, when we were here, mental health was not exactly a priority. It's a long time ago. We had Reverend Wick around. There were probably 1 or 2 counselors somewhere on campus, but they weren't very high profile. That's changed a lot. Now there's the Counseling and Wellness Center that Nicole runs. There's 4 bona fide counselors there. There's a wellness coordinator. So for the students here, you have plenty of resources right here on campus available. But for you as a professional, as an operator, going back to the beginning of your career up through today, obviously some progress has been made. But how much of that stigma have we eroded?
So first of all, I am not speaking on behalf of the Department of Defense tonight. So these are my own alumni thoughts that I'm sharing with you.
Sorry, I forgot the disclaimer. He told me about that too. So he's speaking for himself.
Now is not the time to be a sunshine patriot, but I want to be candid. For a long time, being able to keep your dignity and keep your security clearance might be in conflict. And so reaching out for help or identifying yourself as someone that might need help could be an issue. It could stop you from doing the thing that you had wanted to do, keep you from being active in a profession that you had worked really hard to be in. And so over time, I think there was a recognition that the normal approaches to receiving support for a bad situation that you might find yourself in shouldn't impact your ability to do your job. So over time, the approach became definitely more professional. So we saw this with the creation of the Preservation of the Force and Family program inside of US SOCOM that helped to focus resources on the men and women operators, their families, the physical aspects of being fit, the mental aspects of being fit, and the spiritual aspects of being fit. So the approach being identify early and often areas where someone might need support, whether it be with their relationships with a partner, their relationships with a child, their relationships with their teammates and their chain of command, and get them the support that they needed. On an individual level, it might be about recovery from an injury, whether that was a traumatic brain injury, whether it was a physical injury based on an event, or it could have been a spiritual injury. So the synchronization of a staff at the organizational level to get those resources into play included that full spectrum of care. That took a little while to move from an idea to being implemented. And by the time that Admiral McCraven handed that off to General Votel was doing he was doing, just like we did a video clip to talk about this topic, he was doing those. And he was talking about check up, check down, check sideways. Not only to normalize these conversations, but for everyone to understand, the boss might need a check. The commander of the organization might need to be checked in on. How are you doing? Is there something we can do for you? Are you getting what you need? And that was a significant shift. So moving towards an approach that allowed people to do their job, retain their dignity, to know that if they were asking for help and support, they weren't going to be turned away, that they were going to be resourced appropriately, was the right approach. I'm not sure if he's here, but the guy who gave me permission to get help was the father of two of my classmates. He was a Vietnam helicopter pilot.
Colonel Brayman?
Colonel Rick Brayman. And I remember standing in a dog park talking to him on the phone, and he told me his own story. And he told me it was okay to get the support that I needed. And that human interaction with someone that I cared for and trusted and I knew had served his country in a very dangerous way was very important. And so the relationships that we build are really an access point. So the Harvard study on health and happiness, this longitudinal study that's decades old, the number one finding from that is your close interpersonal relationships are the key to your long-term happiness and health.
What was it about the interaction that you had in that moment that made it, gave you permission? It's not only talking to the person, it's about what happens in the interaction, right? Can you recall what made it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it was a couple of things. One, someone who I looked to, he was a giant among men, someone who, we sometimes don't celebrate our heroes, but this is someone that I had celebrated and had been a mentor of mine, had been a borrowed father figure.
The respect.
A lot of respect. And even after we graduated, he came and worked here as an assistant commandant and helped touch the lives of cadets. And was a good example. As I became a father, he was a good example. He was very candid about his relationships and the way in which those relationships became important to him to do something about how he was feeling and how he was showing up in the world. And I knew, based on that conversation, that maybe I wasn't showing up in the world the way I wanted to. So when you recognize that you're causing people to walk on eggshells, when you're not open and accessible, when you haven't been the person that is holding space and actively listening to help them, it's pretty significant. And he recognized that in himself, other people recognized it, and he shared it with me, and it helped me unlock a lot of doors. It was like a crescendo.
Buddy Check program's been around a couple of years now. Pretty successful program. A lot of it could be pretty casual, where you just sort of calling people, hey, what's up, how are you doing? Sort of a surface level check-in. What about for the times that you want to probe a little bit deeper without being annoying? Are there good topics or questions that you would suggest asking? Doc?
I'm just going to share how I have distilled the risk assessment that I personally make whenever I have to evaluate people. And it's going to sound very clinical. Don't take it as such. It's just the way that is what I do. So first, don't try to be the therapist that you're not trained to be. So it's okay to have a limit to what you can do. And it's okay to share that, because that might have an impact to the person you're talking to and saying, listen, this is big. We need to get you some help. And I'm seeing this, and you need to hear me. I'm seeing that you need help. So that's one thing. The other piece, from a very clinical standpoint, the way that I evaluate is distilled to this: the wish to live against the wish to die. If you want to live versus if you want to die. And you can both hold the wish to live and the wish to die. So there are two very different questions that I assess. The second layer is how much pain you're in. It can be physical pain, it can be emotional pain, and there are ebbs and flows to pain, whether it's physical or emotional. We all know that. And when you're in a heightened state of emotional distress, the way that you experience the pain will be magnified, and then your coping strategies will not be as effective. So the wish to live against the wish to die. How much pain are you in from 0 to 10? And how are you coping? It's one thing to be in a lot of pain and being able to cope with it, right? That's called grit and resilience, both physically and mentally. But if you get to a point where you have such an emotion, you have such emotional pain or physical pain, and your coping skills, right, your tricks for keeping yourself in check emotionally, which is a normal human choice and behavior, if that's not working, that's when it goes red, right? So wish to live against wish to die, how much pain you're in, how are you coping? And the gasoline is about shame. Do you feel shame? Shame is a very deep-seated feeling that will surface in the moments of most vulnerability. And that is very difficult to overcome, and it will be a huge barrier for people to seek help. And that's where, as buddies, you need to be in touch with that piece of shame. So, wish to live against wish to die, amount of emotional or physical pain against your ability to cope, and whether you're experiencing some shame. These are the essence of what I assess. I really don't listen as much to the story. I really evaluate that and make an assessment of where is the risk according to that. And I'm talking about the immediate risk of self-harm. So maybe that helps you, kind of remembering that. Maybe that helps you when you find yourself in a place where you feel in distress, where you can kind of reset and think, okay, I really don't want to die. I really want to live. I just don't know how I'm going to go from today to tomorrow. And I just need to simmer on the emotional or the physical pain. So that's really a way to articulate how to get help. Because it's very difficult to seek help and say, I need help because of X. Right? You just feel overwhelmed, you don't know, you're afraid, what are you going to ask you don't know, it's like scary. But the more you kind of dissect it in those categories, then you're able to talk it out. So I don't know if it answered your questions.
No, you did. You did. Those are the cases we need to be on the lookout for. There's probably some levels in between getting to someone who's that distressed. I had a couple of questions that I fished off the internet doing some research here of things that we can ask. I thought these were decent. What's been the highlight of your week? It's a very specific question. Check and see if they're still doing and enjoying things that they did before. Is there anything you've been struggling with? Pretty straightforward. What's something you're looking forward to? That's a big one. Is there anything on your mind you want to talk about? How can I support you? Are you taking care of yourself? Do you need any help with that? Rev, Chris, you got anything on those? Do those sound good, bad? Do you want to cross any of them off the list or add to them?
You asked about what would make it awkward. I go back to the relational starting point that we know each other well. You stayed in our home many times. Do you use the front door or the back door to our house?
Front.
No.
Well, that's the back door, isn't it?
Back door.
It's the functional of front door.
Politicians, salesmen, and cultic leaders come to our front door. You come to the back door. What's the first major room you hit in our home that we stay in and talk in?
The first major room, your study.
Not that far. The kitchen.
Kitchen.
Now, here's where I'm going with that. To set a foundation for a buddy check system, guys, I guess gals too, we talk over food. Not vegetables. We go out for non-meatless. Non-meatless is steak. Meatless is no meat, steak. Talking over food, many folks go to a restaurant that's a bar and grill. Where am I going with that? That becomes a context for an unhurried conversation. We're doing something else. Guys will shoot hoop or throw footballs. Just sitting and talking is not often what we're going to do. So something that's, let's go out for a burger. In an unhurried way, we talk that over things, and it shows two things, that there's a clinical approach, there's a professional approach, there's also a personal approach, all which are crucial. It's more important to be needed than wanted. The FBI wants people. You probably find value in being there for a friend. And your day ends by saying, I was there for a friend, I fulfilled a need, I was there, I felt needed. Well, on the flip side, when they ask us questions and we say, I've got it, what we're saying to them is, I don't need you, which is not true. They are friends because we have similarities, similar interests. I'm in the Vermont Astronomical Society, I'm a skier at Sugar Bush, I'm a sailor. There's a whole group of people I've gotten to know through having things that we hold in common. The same approach, you think about a hospital, the professional, the doctor, the surgeon. Who knows the patient best during the week? The doctor, the surgeon, or the nurses? The nurses who spend time with them because they've had that time, that commitment of professional care with that personal touch. They're who are doing the bedpans and so on and showing that they care by doing more difficult things. So think about this. When we say to someone, I'm fine or don't need you, that's a lie. Each person you have in your life, I'm a theologian, pastor, chaplain speaking, I think are not there by accident. As I go through scripture, I look at the fact that Moses had Aaron, Elijah had Elisha, Paul had Barnabas, Caleb had Joshua. The apostles were sent out 2 by 2, I think for accountability and also for encouragement. I find very few examples in scripture where they were a lone ranger. Lone rangerism never works well for long. Even the Lone Ranger had Tonto. Batman had Robin. And so back to this, to your question of awkwardness, Randy knows better than to come to my front door. Why? We know each other. Also, when you food with someone or have them in your room or your home, you've gone from level 1 friendship to level 2 automatically, which gives you the opportunity to eyeball and watch. And then when you call and say, how are you doing? They say, fine. You can hear in the tone of their voice, that's not true. Hey, let's get together for a burger. And without blowing their cover, the awkwardness is gone because you're going to do something you both enjoy, but over the course of that, in an unhurried way, that's the buddy check system. Buddies do things they enjoy doing together, and that opens the door. So that, to me, avoids the awkwardness, Randy, by having not just a conversation but doing stuff together, shooting hoop, football, skiing, that we can watch, and that takes away the awkwardness and lays the foundation for sharing.
Chris, you ever have a buddy check backfire on you or go south?
Yes. Catastrophically. So one of my classmates, who was the best man at my wedding, captain of our hockey team, called me one day and he said, hey, I think I need some help. And I said, yeah, what do you need? This is before the buddy check. And he said, well, I think that I've been drinking too much. And of course I said what most of us would say, which is, well, drink less. So I didn't grow up with alcohol as an illness in my home. I didn't recognize it. I wasn't a professional at dealing with it. And I said, I'm not sure that I'm the best person to help you with this, but I'll do whatever you need. Whatever you need, I'll help you. And over the course of the next few weeks, and I say we, because I almost immediately after that phone call reached out to half a dozen friends, classmates, and I said, hey, fellas, I need a hand. We got a friend who needs some help. This is what he's telling me. And what can we do? And over the course of a few weeks, we did what I thought was a lot. We listened. We also chastised. We took positions on things. We didn't necessarily always hold space. So we made mistakes. We definitely learned from that. At a certain point, we deployed people, intercepted, ensured that we did the food, share the food. We had state troopers from a particular state go and get firearms out of the house. We called an estranged spouse. We invoked the importance of being sober to be a good parent. We made a lot of missteps. We spoke not knowing the full effect of what substances had done in this person's life. And that didn't end well. Didn't end well for him or his family. And so, that created an environment for us to really have some of these conversations. So we knew that someone had needed help. We didn't know how to help them. We took steps. Some of those were still related to what we had learned in the early days of our military service, and they weren't necessarily what was proactively helpful to someone in crisis. So then we really started to roll up our sleeves and take a look at how we could be more effective in our communication, in listening, holding space, getting treatment, getting people to treatment. And so those conversations are much different today than they were 5 or 6 years ago.
Right. Here are some things to avoid. Don't ask leading or judgmental questions. Don't be intrusive. Don't jump to offering unsolicited advice. I'm good at that. Or minimize their feelings. Don't ask questions that focus entirely on the negative or are too vague. Avoid comparing people. That's a killer. Don't rush the conversation. The patience that you mentioned before. Don't be confrontational, guilt shaming. How did you let this happen? Probably isn't going to help anybody. We mentioned the substance abuse. What percentage of people with mental health challenges manifest some sort of substance abuse, roughly, would you say?
Substance use disorder it's a whole dimension, and emotional distress is another one, and mental illness is another one. So I think that, and it's a very broad spectrum, and not all substance use disorders are the same. So it's very important not to draw conclusions about substance use disorder and weakness, or substance use disorder and mental illness, or violence for what it's worth, because they're all on a continuum. So I'm very cautious of answering that kind of question, because it creates categories where that makes people feel better, but it's not necessarily reflective of the reality of what people experience.
Okay. Chris, in your world specifically, special operations, you've dealt with a lot of this stuff. What percentage, roughly, I know it's not a peer-reviewed article, but of those guys had a commingling substance abuse issue?
90%.
Okay.
Easily.
Self-medicating?
When things go really bad, there's usually substances involved as a self-medication. And I think for all of the reasons that you spoke about, including shame. So, the pain that someone's in and how they're coping with it. And it could be medicine that they're using. It could be alcohol, which is it's one of those socially acceptable coping mechanisms to a point. But the anger, depression mix with the shame, I saw that at a really significantly high level.
In January of this year, we lost a member of the class of '92, Tevi Yoblick. He's a good friend of a lot of people, and that one still has people railing. Tevi was a very involved graduate, had a very close group of friends, played poker every single week with them, went to events with them, they checked in on each other constantly, and there was no indication whatsoever that anything was going wrong until we had lost him. And those are the ones that scare us the most. And it's an impossible question, but how do you reach those people? How do we remind ourselves that, as the checker, we do all of these things, but as the checkee, remind ourselves to remain open and to share, before things get that far?
Yeah, I would say that oftentimes the main driver is shame, and this feeling like you can't be vulnerable, that you can't open up or reach out because you feel so rotten, that in some people it's even, I feel so rotten that I'm going to inflict that rottenness on you. So I don't want to submit you to that. It can go so far whenever it reaches this level of lack of reality testing. And I'm not saying that everybody's there, but that's just my life. That's what I do. So I think that there is, I talked about a little bit earlier about accountability. And when you're in the positions that you're in, when you're growing up to be officers, you need to be accountable to yourself because you're accountable to others. And if you can't get to a point where you have that honesty with your own self, then you're really letting others down. And you're letting yourself down. So what I said a little bit earlier is that we all own that accountability, and when you're trying to help someone, you also have to be aware that you're there to help. There is so much you can do, and you want to create the space to engage the other, and the other has the accountability to play in the sandbox with you. So to those of us who will be and will continue to be not only those who reach out, but those who receive the buddy check, we all have to have the accountability to let the pride and the shame go and allow vulnerability so that we can play in the sandbox. If we don't play in the sandbox with the person that reaches out to us, it's going to cost our life. And that's what happens. So we need to commit to our own selves to have that honesty. And it starts there. And it starts when you're going through the rough stuff, right? You don't let go. You work on yourself. You reach out, you talk it out. So there is that accountability individually. And there is so much you can do with some people.
Mm-hmm. Rev, let's say, let me pitch this one to you. Chris just gave examples of a buddy check that sort of backfired as they kind of called in the cavalry. Is that fair to say? When people talk to you, when I talk to you, I know I'm talking to a vault. I know that it is absolutely between you and I. However, when you're buddy checking with people, you could get to the point where you realize, okay, I need to do something here. And you worry about violating somebody's trust, but it might be time to talk to a family member, might be time to call the authorities, might be time to make sure that they're not alone, as you did, take the firearms. What's the red light? When do you know that it's time to sound the alarm?
There has to be a sense of humility in our work of knowing where our limitations are. That there are areas of expertise and understanding each of us have beyond which is beyond our pay grade, if you will. When I had my cancer 6 years ago, Dr. Sullivan discovered it, the prostate. Another guy did the biopsy, a surgeon did the surgeon. Each would have their own area of expertise. They didn't argue with each other as to what their capacities were. So with that, one of the crucial things I believe in this is delegation. Many times the students that come down and stressed on campus here are brought down by a roommate, by a friend, a buddy who've come before. Let's have coffee with the Rev or a hot chocolate. And they're also sizing me up in the office as I'm listening. But delegation, where we've had people before who we've turned to, who've met our need, and we know that we can trust them, one, that they have the expertise, but also keep it to themselves. We cannot promise we will not involve somebody else. We can't ever say that. But we'd say, I will do it with your permission, but here's so-and-so on our campus or elsewhere who I've talked to who's helped me. Would you allow me to go with you to meet this friend? And it might just to meet them. Because we have to trust them first, so if we're handing them off to them, that we can trust that they will do the job beyond what we can do. But we have to understand where our limitation is and be very honest with that, or we're not helping whatsoever. Secondly, we cannot always be there. Outside my office door, there's a paper that has address to my home, directions there, phone number, email. I leave for Wichita at 3:30 tomorrow morning. I'll be gone until next Monday. I have things in line, people filling up where I'm going. But in saying that, if we can't always be there, say, I can't be there now, I got a class. Could you see so-and-so right now? And you got a buddy, could you have a cup of coffee, my friend, till I get back? Because we cannot always be there. If we jeopardize our academic life, other things for others, they'll feel guilty that you failed that test because of me. We have to say, what's my backup plan? Who steps in when I can't be there? I'll see in an hour or so. So that's delegation too. I use an illustration of busyness versus business. All of us are busy. Is it business or busyness? I said to my bride when I was a newlywed, our wedding day is April Fool's Day next week. That's our wedding day. When I married Mrs. Rev, I once said to her, I'd rather burn out than rust out. And Deborah looked at me and said, whether you burn out or rust out, you're out. I hadn't thought about that. Then she said, because I do a lot of things, of hard things with people's lives, she said, come apart before you come apart. And she's the one that encouraged me last year to sail the perimeter of Lake Champlain or teach skiing at Sugarbush. I have my observatory. She said, here are things I know would help you, where if she couldn't counsel, buy some time that way. So back with this there, the burnout, when you go in Vermont, you may see on the few rest areas we have left a sign, Vermont sign, with an arrow that says, you are here. We need to stop sometime and say, where am I? Because we can be so busy that we don't take time to find out, are we going the right way? Are we going too fast? To stop and take that opportunity to say, where am I? And again, I would add one more thing back to early discussion of the 90% with drug abuse, whatever. Remember, alcohol is a depressant. And drugs, there are drugs prescribed that are necessary, but self-medicated drugs, that escapes the problem for a while, but you come back to the problem. It doesn't resolve it. And so those are masks often and doesn't get to the root of the issue. And that's where we come back to our buddy check system, where we're lowering our guard with people we trust. They aren't going for the jugular. They point us to folk who've helped them, or they're there when they can be, and place folks around them who share that load so it's not just on our shoulders. If we do it by ourselves, we're kidding ourselves and we're not really helping them. But that's my thought on that, Randy.
Let's pivot and talk just for a couple of minutes about resiliency, and then we'll open it up. We want to hear from you guys. Could you help us define this, Doc? We talk about resiliency all the time, how to build it up. What is resiliency?
Wow. I don't think I've ever been asked that question. How would Isabelle answer that question? Resilience is about believing that this too shall pass. I think that's the best way to define it for me, is having the hope and understanding that the moment experience is short-lived and that this too shall pass. And using all the coping strategies that works for you to decrease the emotional amplitude in the moment, focus on the goal, and have the faith and hope alive, and that this too shall pass. That's what resilience is to me.
That works. Chris, you're one of the toughest people I know in every way, but I know that you work at it. How do you address that in your own life?
I mean, it's a practice, I think, and there were times when I didn't have it right. So I think one of the things that's become really important to me is celebrating my relationships with people. The last couple months has been amazing. Seeing, I had a great week when we did the Doc Martin fundraiser. I was able to see friends from a really wide kind of swath of my life, work-related, Norwich people, and then another group of friends that emerged out of some other relationships. And I had driven up to New York City. I came back down through DC. I stopped at one of our good friends' house in Washington, DC to spend the night. And he said, "You look really good." I said, "I am just feeling joy. I'm feeling joy." I sent you a note about it. Here's the behind the scenes. We've all become really close. And so being able to celebrate these joyous occasions and realize I'm in the moment, I'm really appreciative of the family and friends that I have, is one of those. It's probably at the tip of the spear for me. Physical fitness, nutrition, a habit practice that allows me to set my day at the very beginning of my day in a way that the rest of the day doesn't really matter what happens. I've already done all the things I know I needed to do to increase my resiliency, to make sure that if I have a bad day or if someone else is having a bad day and I get invited in to help solve a problem, that I've got the energy to do it and the mental focus to do it. So really even sleep now has become a really important factor for me. Sleep is not a crutch. Sleep is not something that we should take for granted. Your brain operates better when you've had sleep. Your hormones work better in your system the way they're supposed to when you've had good rest. So I take my sleep practice pretty seriously. And then in terms of work-life balance, I was way out of balance. Work was everything. Being a father was a job I hadn't been doing all that well. I missed half of my boys' lives because of work. And at the time, I thought that was what everyone was doing and what was important. I can tell you that now my perspective on that is very different. And so I'm trying to make up for lost time on that one.
Rev, how do you build resiliency?
I will add a factor that is not everyone else's, but first of all, I think that on our own, the resilience isn't there. We're very myopic. We just look at the problem that it consumes us. I work from the faith factor. Verse in Scripture, it says, all things work together for good, not that they're good themselves. All things work together for good to those that love God and are called by His purpose. So two things. I say, what would He have me do? And is what I'm doing, thinking, considering something that would honor Him and I could ask Him to bless it? So what happens to me in resilience, besides the other things I've mentioned earlier that I love doing and my wife who holds me accountable, is I make certain that I have a perspective that goes beyond myself to say, did God do this would happen? Yes. Is He doing it? Not necessarily. Is He allowing it? Yes. What's He placed there for resources that will get me through, or people? Every prayer God's ever answered in my life, He answered through a person. I've realized that recently. That I keep saying it to Him, but He answered through a person, a job, encouragement, whatever. But to say, am what I'm doing something that would honor Him, shows I love Him, and it's according to His purpose. If we were to structure our lives that way amidst all the storm, I think that'd make a difference. I'll give one final illustration. There was a man in New York City, a financier, who was very stressed by his job. He asked a famous painter to paint a mural of peace. And so the famous painter did this mural, hung it behind a curtain. The financier brought folks from Wall Street for dinner one night for the unveiling. And as they unveiled the painting, they all gasped, because here was a painting of the Maine coast with a storm and cascading waves and rain, and just, it was horrible. And he said, "You mocked me." And the artist looked at the financier and said, "Look more closely." As they looked at this horrible painting of absolute devastation In the cleft of a rock was a seagull asleep. And he said to the gentleman, he said, it's not peace when it's peaceful around us. It's when amidst the storm we can lie down and sleep. And he had that verse of scripture about God being there in our times of duress. But that was the picture. We are going to have things in our lives that we don't expect. If you're going to go and get deployed someday, they will be trying to kill you. That is not a joke. And you can be killed in a body bag or come back with the memories of that which is there. So what do we do for this storm? We have those who God's placed near us, realizing He's allowed it to occur. He can use those same pains and hurts to benefit others, but we cannot do it alone. My last comment as a theologian, even God, Father, Son, and Spirit, one God, three persons, fellowship with Himself. He didn't do it alone. As the eternal God, there's fellowship there too. So there, the buddy check system, use the buddies that God has placed around you. And if we can't fulfill the need, who have we gone to, who we can point those friends to and get the job done?
I have one more question for Dr. Desjardins. It's a hard one, and then we're going to come to you guys for your comments and questions. Got to figure out the right way to word this one, because I don't want to sound insensitive, but we were talking about it a little bit earlier. How do we keep ourselves and others from wallowing, which probably isn't the right word, ruminating too much on our pain or our sorrow? You know, if everybody deals with grief differently, sometimes it takes some people more time than others. I'm talking about the more extreme cases where the person won't get up. I'm not saying get over it. I'm saying get through it. How do we deal with those situations?
Yeah.
I told you it was a hard one.
Yeah. I think that it's important to talk things out. It's also important to make a informed choice. We always have choices in life. Things will happen to us, and we have a choice to approach what is happening to us in a way, and we do have control on that. So we have control on choosing whether we're going to see the glass empty or the glass half full or half empty. So that starts with this intentional choice that we all have to experience what's happening to us in one way or another. And don't take me wrong, we do have the choice, all right? The other piece is once you feel like you need to wallow, which I totally do, I admit fully, you have to it's helpful, let's say, not you have, but it's helpful to set the frame and saying, okay, I'm gonna bitch. You know, I'm just telling you, this is what's gonna happen now, and I need that space, and if you're in it with me, then stay with me, and this is the space, but it needs to be contained. And you owe that to yourself, and you owe that to the other, right? I think it's fair. So again, it's all about accountability for your own choices. That's the best answer I can give you for the wallowing question.
It's a good one. That's a tough one to answer. This is end of March, so we're coming up on the end of the school year. Rings tomorrow night, graduation. This is the time of year when a lot of grads will give unsolicited advice to you. Some of it will be very good, some of it not so good. So I would say take it all with a grain of salt. But the one thing I can absolutely promise you, and this is something that I wish somebody had explained to me when I was still on the Hill and about to graduate, was what to expect, was that everybody knows there's highs and lows in life. But the highs and the lows are going to be higher and lower than you could possibly imagine. So the good stuff that comes, there's going to be days where you're just walking on clouds and accomplishing things you weren't even trying to do. And the flip side of that coin is that the lows are lower than you're expecting them at this point. And they can come out of nowhere, and you need to be ready for them. The hopeful part of all that is once you join the Norwich family, you will never be alone for the rest of your life, ever. Doesn't matter where you are in the world. If you ever need anything, you just reach out to us, and I can promise you we will be there for you. So give them a warm round of applause, and then we'll open it up to you folks. Thank you. There are 2 microphones up there if anybody, and this is my nightmare that nobody's going to have a question or comment, so make one up if you can. You could either step up to one of the mics, or if you just want to stand up and sound off, I'm sure that would work just as well. Here we go, first customer.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Cadet Yaskar Nieves. I'm a senior, and I'm going into the Navy. And I really have a question as a leader for sailors in the future. How do I help a subordinate who is unable to meet the unit standards because of a challenge they are going through without seeming like you're playing favorites?
That's a great question. Unit standards are important, whether it's a physical fitness or a comportment job, a technical aspect. There are going to be times when people are going to have challenges that are going to prevent them from fully focusing on their duties. You want to reduce those as much as you can, and help return them back to the level that they need to be at. So, the focusing on whether or not you're playing favorites as a leader, it'll become evident to your organization if you're trying to take care of someone. They'll recognize you for taking care of someone who might be in a situation that they need a little help on. And that you don't have to do that all yourself. So your unit chaplain, the unit psychiatrist, psychologist become critical to you fully addressing someone's needs.
I would add that if you contextualize your role as the connector, right? Your role is not to take on a project, right? And I can guarantee you that as a leader, you're going to fall in that trap one time or another in your career. You're going to think that you need to help somebody, and that somebody is going to bring you down, and it's going to be a whole project. You don't want to do that as a leader. You want to learn from that. But if you conceptualize yourself as a connector, then you'll be able to keep everything else afloat while getting the help for the person that needs the help, and not really coming across as all your energies and attention are focused on one element of your dimensions of responsibilities. You see that? So try to think about it as you're the connector. And then you're really going to be successful because you're going to help everybody float. Does that resonate?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Excellent question.
Awesome. Thank you.
Good stuff there. Anybody else?
Good evening. My name is C.C. Winters. I'm a sophomore studying CJ and minoring in informational warfare. This is a question for Lieutenant Colonel Cadigan. Sir, you mentioned substance abuse affecting 90% of personnel within Special Forces. In what ways did you see those who suffered negatively affect operations due to the abuse, and what ways did those who suffered combat the illness? What resources do they have readily available to them in their situation?
That's a multi-part question.
Yes, it is, sir.
Okay. What was the last part one more time?
What resources did they have readily available to them?
Yep. Here's the good news. There are a lot more resources available now than there used to be. So that's number one. Number two, the advice that Dr. Desjardins just gave about projects becomes really important in this approach. Substance abuse is not something you're going to be fully equipped to handle as a platoon leader, as a company commander. There are these resources available that will help you help that person, so that you don't have to spend and invest your time, which is your most valuable resource as a leader, into one person. And again, it goes back to, you're going to show not just that person, but the entire organization that you're taking care of them. And you're going to learn very rapidly who the other people are in your organization that you can rely on. So the unit chaplain, the JAG officer, the unit psych, behavioral health, the on-post, whether it's a clinic or a hospital capability. Many of the smaller posts are not going to have a treatment program necessarily. And so you're going to have to get that person into the program so they can go somewhere else to another facility, very likely. So that's the last part of your question. Impacts of substance abuse on operations can be significant. They can be catastrophic. And as a leader, you have to protect your entire force as part of your risk mitigation. Someone that is maybe not operating at their full capacity is one thing. Someone that's self-medicating and possibly without anyone's knowledge is a whole other threat to your success, mission accomplishment, the morale of the unit, in a way that you may not be able to foresee. And so I'm going to tell one quick story about Iraq 2006. And I had two members of my organization that had been long-term, highly functioning dependency. They had dependency issues, which I did not know. And both of them came to me right before that deployment. One night, after a really big operation that was incredibly successful, for which we, as an organization, were receiving a lot of pats on the back that we'd done a good job. And the men in my unit were pretty happy with the way things had gone. And all the organizations around us were very happy with the way things had gone. One of my men who had this long-term dependency issue drank to the point of intoxication, got behind the wheel of a vehicle that he put people in the vehicle, he was driving, he rolled the vehicle. We had several casualties as a result of that. Serious injuries, broken back, broken hips, broken legs. Some local nationals were hurt. In the aftermath of that, I can tell you, our unit morale shifted considerably for the next 72 hours in terms of, we thought we were getting pulled off the battlefield. And if you're really serious about your craft, you want to play, like if you are playing football, you want to play in the Super Bowl. And that's where we were. We were in the Super Bowl of life. And having a team member in that situation created an environment for us that we weren't even going to be allowed to do our job. What was really fascinating was the way that got handled all around us. So leaders to the left, right, up, and down all took a different tactic on how they wanted to handle that. The good news is most of my organization had the resiliency to bounce back from that. I got to listen to the leaders around me make judgments about the environment of our unit as a result of one person's actions. It was definitely a one bad apple spoils the bunch situation. Had I had the opportunity to off-ramp that project, it was actually well known by his previous unit that he had some of these issues, which had been kept from me as part of the transfer. I never would have deployed with that person. So knowing your people is really important. It taught me a valuable lesson. about really understanding who everybody is. And there were some significant long-term effects of that event, not just for me. That person left Special Forces. And the event itself tended to come up from time to time as people talked about the good and the bad of what our people were capable of doing. So those kind of events are significant. And then the other thing I can tell you is, if you're doing really dangerous stuff, you don't want somebody that's not 100% focused. If you're jumping out of planes, if you're doing a lot of dangerous kind of stuff, you want everybody to be sober and focused.
Thank you, sir.
Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Anybody else? And if you're more comfortable, if you have something to say, we'll come to you. But one sec, George. Feel free to hang out afterwards, and I'm sure the panelists will hang out and chat with you. Sir.
Ma'am, gentlemen, we've mentioned a lot about helping others and how to approach friends and family who may need help. There's a lot of folks, whether it's civilian or military life, that don't necessarily find healthy outlets when it comes to helping relieve stress, and it begins to compound on itself. What advice would you have for folks who are struggling internally to try and help recognize when they personally would need help, and then how to encourage themselves in reaching out to battle buddies for the help that they may need?
Rev?
We have to choose to have friends who are commissioned by us to ask us the hard questions. On our campus here, for example, Dr. Yagmo Koo and Dr. Travis Morris are my two accountability partners. Godly men, intelligent men, brilliant men who can ask hard questions. We get together every week individually, meet with each one different days for a few minutes over lunch, but also to check up on each other. Why do I say that? Sometimes we're so close to our own selves we can't see it. It takes, I'm told, for pieces of art, stand back from a piece of art to get the whole picture. And so the way to do that, we all have a blind side. And we need someone who can know us enough to call a spade a spade. That is not something, even if we want to do on our own, we do successfully. So my quick answer is, choose friends who aren't just yes people. They can tell you yes, tell you no, but they can ask the hard question, not because they're trying to tear us down, but we know they care. That's to our benefit to have that kind of relationship for those times, and we just can't even see it. Marriage does a great job of helping you find that out too. So.
And I would answer the question by saying that we all have a sense of our good old self, right? If I'm asking you, you feel like your good old self, right? It resonates with you can figure out what it looks and feels like to be your good old self, I think. I would say, do you feel like your good old self? Are you far from feeling like your good old self? What's in between? Do you feel out of control? Like the moment where you feel out of control, that's a sign. Because you feel out of control, that means that your coping strategies have not worked and you're spinning in mud, right? You're trying hard, you're spending a lot of your energies in trying to cope, and there's no traction. That's when you feel out of control. That's the time. And you have to be honest enough with yourself to say, okay, I don't want to be behind the wheel of that car, right? Because I'm out of control. Now, the question that I would ask someone who comes to me that is honest enough with themselves to say, I don't feel like my good old self and I feel out of control, would be, what do you think is the best next step? I would ask the person because you usually know what needs to happen, right? And sometimes you just need to say it out loud to make it real. And once you've said it out loud and made it real, then it's much easier because there's no more fear, right? There is this acceptance of it is what it is. I'm out of control and I need to get help. Now I have the hope that it's going to happen and I know that it's going to help me. So that's how I would answer that. Does that help?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Anybody else? I think we got it then. If you'd like to chat with any of them afterwards, I'm sure they'll hang out. Thank you very much again for taking the time out of your night. I hope this was worth it for you. And if I haven't met you, I look forward to meeting you. One final round of applause for our panelists. Thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. Great. Have a good night. You can get your shirts out front, I believe. Well, I think when you have public discussions like this, and you have panelists like we have tonight, who are willing to talk about their own personal experiences and how they've triumphed over them, that it gives people hope that whatever it is that they're going through, that they can get through it. Maybe you never get over it, but you can get through it, and you can get to a point where you can still live a full and happy life.
We're not alone, and we have access to support mechanisms, and that the buddy check is a really good start.
Being a Lone Ranger never works well. And so the idea of having folks who hold us accountable but also encourage us, we can't encourage ourselves when we're down, so that buddy check system to make sure we're safe and have someone who's watching our back.
Learning from experiences like Chris Cadigan and the other people in the panel and alumni that struggle with PTS, I think it's being shown support, knowing that they're not alone, that we're here, that they have lots of friends, they're well loved, and just awareness of other people to support people they may know. Those multiple degrees of connection.
I believe that we cannot stop talking about the importance of putting mental health at the forefront because it saves lives.